but rather we need it for the halacha of Rabbi Yitzchak. And now we turn to Daf Vav Amud Beis. Rabbi Yitzchak Devar Torah, according to the Torah law, which is what's called a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So that's what very important that we emphasize this. What Rabbi Yitzchak has in mind when he says Devar Torah, he's talking about halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And what is that halacha? Rubo umakpid olav chotzetz. But v'she'eno makpid olav eno chotzetz. The halacha Moshe Sinai is really breaking new ground. If we only had the Doraisa, I would have assumed that a chatzitza undermines the validity of his tefillah in all cases. Comes along the halacha Moshe Sinai to restrict it and limit it, and teaches us that it's only if you have two conditions. Number one, that which prevents your body to come in contact with the water. Let's say he has cement on his body or paint, right? So then it's got to cover most of his body. Again, all this is on a Doraisa level. Please keep that in mind. We're not paskening halacha. The Gemara is going to now show you what the Rabbanan did to this. They radically changed this. But on a Doraisa level, which means halacha l'Moshe Sinai in this context, you need A, that it's got to be rov, and B, it's got to be makpid. Now Rashi learns that the word rov here is referring to his hair, not to his body. Most of his hair is full of knots. And that's when midoraisa hair becomes a chatzitza. Number two, he's makpid olav. I would imagine if most of his hair is in knots, he might be makpid about that. You know, get himself over to a hairdresser. I don't know if he has to shave his hair. Could be.
You know, like these guys that have drip.
Those curls.
Braids.
Oh, braids, right? Braids.
Braids, like black.
Right.
They do braids, all the hairs are in braids.
But she'eno makpid olav, eno chotzetz. And this is the halacha Moshe Sinai. So basically, the halacha of chatzitzin is an integration of both Doraisa and halacha Moshe Sinai. Though Doraisa gives us the general rule of chatzitza, it's got to touch the water, has to come in contact with this basa directly without anything whatever the word is anyway. And on a halacha Moshe Sinai level, we are restricting and adding conditions. That it's only a chatzitz if A, it's rov gufo, or rov seir, the way Rashi interprets it, and it's got to be makpid. Now come the Rabbanan. They changed the whole picture. Gazru. The Chachamim made a gzera. Al rubo she'eno makpid. Why? If I'm not makpid, then a condition is gone. Bishum rubo makpid, meaning, if we're going to allow you to go into the mikvah when you have a case of rov, let's go with Rashi, rov seir is a chatzitza, and you're going to say, well, I'm okay because I'm not makpid. Then tomorrow, you'll apply the same reasoning even in a case where you're makpid. And then you're in deep trouble because you really have a chatzitza doraisa. Now the Rabbanan added another gzera. Al mi'uto hamakpid. Even in a case where most of his body is not covered by a chatzitza, and he's only got a mute, but he's makpid on that mute. He doesn't want cement on his body, even though it's only covering the top of his arm. And why did the Rabbanan make that zero? Mishum rubo makpid. Because tomorrow he's going to say that even in the case of rov, it's okay. Because he thinks that he thinks in his mind that there's no difference between mute and rov. You know, he's not sensitive to that distinction. So even though, according to Torah law, since it's only mute, it's not a chatzitza, but the Rabbanan elevated it to the status of a chatzitza, mishum gzera, because he might apply that rule even in rov. Now, what happens in the case of mute she'eno makpid? So the Gemara asks, "Nami al mute she'eno makpid," because what? Mishum, if you're telling me he's going to make a mistake and he's going to equate mute, he's going to equate eno makpid with makpid, then it makes sense that we have to equate eno makpid with makpid. Inami mishum rubo she'eno makpid, and he'll make a mistake between mute and rov. The Gemara answers, This is a famous Gemara. I'm sure you've all heard the principle of Ein Gozer Gzeira L'Gzeira. Right? He Gufa Gzeira, V'anan Nekum V'nigzar Gzeira L'Gzeira. You're going to pile up two Gzeiras, one on top of the other. You're afraid that it'll confuse Miyut with Rov and Eino Makud with Mak. That far we don't have to go. Now we have the third category of Rav, Mechitzin. So the Gemara says, what is Mechitzin referring to? This is what we learned back on Daf Hey, here in Masechet Succah, that the shear of Mechitza for a Sukkah is 10 Tvachim. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to derive that. That makes sense according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that in Klei Migdash, the shear of an Amma is 5 Tvachim. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no way that we could derive the shear of Mechitza's Sukkah from the Aron and the Kruvim, as we discussed back on Daf Hey, because then we come up with a whole different shear. I think it was 11.5, if I remember correctly. But Rabbi Meir himself derives the shear of Mechitza from the Aron and the Kruvim. Is Michael Meimar? How can you tell me in the name of Rav that Mechitza is Halach L'Moshe Sinai? It's not Halach L'Moshe Sinai. We derive from the Torah. And the Gemara says, Ki asoi hilchas, so we need the Halach L'Moshe Sinai to teach me three new principles that we would not know from the Torah. It's only derived from and known through a transmission, an oral transmission from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe, and from Moshe to the Skadim, and so forth and so on. Number one is God, Legod. Okay, we'll talk about God. Number two is Lavud, and number three is Dofen Akum. So let's go one by one. First, we start with God. Now, what is God? Let me just say it in a general form. God means to extend. And what we're talking about is, again, this is my terminology. I'm guilty of this. No one can blame anybody else but me. I call it imaginary mechitzos. The mechitzos that you can't see with your eyes. Because we're extending a mechitza that exists, and we're making it into a valid mechitza based on this halacha l'Moshe Sinai called God, when we draw it. Now, in which direction do we draw it? So we have something called God Asik, and we have something called God Achis. God Asik means when we take it up, extend it towards the north, right, towards Shemayim. And then we have something called God Achis when we extend it down. So let's give an example of God Asik. God Asik would be, let's say I have mechitzos. I've got schach on top. There's airspace between the mechitzos and the schach. And once I have these mechitzos, I'm allowed to apply the principle of God Asik. God Asik means to extend it upwards. When do we apply God Achis to extend it downwards? That's called P Tikra Yorid Desosa. I forget we have to know half of the Seth area. And in a Daf Yomi, I can't do that. But let me just give you the general idea. We have something called an achsadra. An achsadra is kind of, if I could use this much like a chuppah. What do I mean? You've got schach, and the schach is being held up by very thin poles that do not have the shear of a mechitzah sukkah, and we apply the principle of pi tikra yored v'sosin, which means we extend, again, this is all in the mind, in the halachic mind, we extend the edges of the tikra, of the ceiling, as if they came down. Then we go on to lavud. Lavud means that you have an open distance between one part of the mechitza and another part of the mechitza of less than 3 tfachim, 2.9 tfachim, we'll call it. It means 2.999. So let's say, for example, and this is going to be the sukkah tomorrow, have you ever seen a very lumdishish sukkah where they have, strings going across this way?
Yeah.
So the distance between one string and the other has to be less than 3 tfachim, so that you can apply lavud is always kisasim. I mean, that's a key word. I should write that on the whiteboard. Satu, samach, tov, vav, mem. And that's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, again, an imagination. And finally, the third halacha is called dofen akum. And Dofen Akuma means that there's a distance between the schach and the schach posel. So you have schach kosher, and then to the side, next to the dofen, you have schach posel. And what we do with dofen akuma, again, it's all in the imagination, is we imagine that schach posel is an extension of the dofen. It's almost as if the curvature is made into a vertical line.
So using the schach as part of the wall.
Exactly. The posel schach is used as part of the wall. So now you've connected your wall with the schach instead of connecting schach posel with your wall. Because if it remains schach posel, then it separates between your schach kosher and the wall. Okay, well, again, all the Masechet Sukkah is about the Dofen Akuma, so I can't tell you, when you're standing on one foot. Even Beit Shammai couldn't, but they still somehow did it. Now the Mishnah says, She'ein la sholosh defanos psula. So you need 3 defanos. Tan Rabbanon. It doesn't mean three defanos, but it means shtayim kil chasan. Now the al-chasan means that the shear of a dofen is 7 tefachim. Hashlish is the 3rd dofen, is afilu tefach. It's only 1 tefach long. Rabbi Shimon Omer, shalosh kil chasan, revius afilu tefach. So we have halach l'moshe Sinai that one of the defanos could be as small as a tefach. But there's machlokes now between the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon on which dofen, to which dofen do we apply this halach l'moshe Sinai. The Chachamim say it's the 3rd dofen. All you need is 2 regular defanos of 7 tefachim, which is the shear of a sukkah. And then you need a 3rd dofen, which is only 1 tefach, and that's derived from halach l'moshe Sinai. Rabbi Shimon says we require 3 full defanos, real defanos, each one that has a shear of a sukkah of 7 tefachim, and the 4th dofen is 1 tefach. Now, the Gemara is going to offer no less than 4 different approaches to explain this machlokes. What are they arguing about? Rabbanan savri yesh aim lemesoros. Rab Shimon savar yesh aim lemikra. Now, I'm not sure if these terms are familiar to you, but for my purposes, I'm going to make believe we don't know what they mean. So I'm going to assume no knowledge. Now, what we're talking about, and this is very common in the Torah, is a word that's written chassid. It's written without a letter. A letter is missing. And we read it as if the letter was there. So you have now 2, it's kind of like a bifurcation. You have what's called ksiv, and you have kri. Good. Now, the machlokas that we're about to approach of Yeshem Lemesores, Yeshem Lemikra is what happens if there's a conflict, a kind of confrontation between the ksiv and the kri. That even though it's written without a vav in this particular case, as I'll show you, nevertheless we read it as if the vav was there. And if you hold that aim yesh aim lemesores, it means that we have mesores as to how the word is written. And that mesores, that tradition, is primary. So forget about how you read it, just focus on how it's written, because the ksiv is part of the transmission of Torah. And the way it's written is the primary. Now, this becomes relevant with regard to Sukkah. Why? There are 3 psukim in the Torah that mention the Sukkah. Basukkah's Teshuvah Shivas Yomim, and there, the word Sukkos is written without a vav. It says Sukkos, Samach, Chaf, Taf. Then it says, L'man yedu doroseker, ki b'sukkos oshavti es b'nei Yisrael. There, the word Sukkos is written mole with a vav. And we have another pasuk that also has Sukkos without a vav. So we have 2 psukim without a vav and 1 with a vav. Just 1 second. Did I get that right? I'm sorry. I apologize. I just have to go over this one more time. I think I got it right. Let me see. Shtei pa'amim. It says Sukkos without a second vav. I got confused because there are two vavs in the word Sukkos. So twice it says Sukkas, which is read, if you put the emphasis on the way you read it, it's in the plural, Sukkas, the Sukkah of. And then the third time it says Sukkos with an extra vav, the second vav, Sukkos. And that's called Mole, and that is Misorah. So now we have twice that it says what? Sukkos without a vav, and once with a vav. Okay, so now the Rabbanan hold that the main thing here is going to be the way it's written. And it's written Sukkos twice without a vav, and the third time with a vav. Rabbi Shimon says, Yeshem Lemikra, forget it. Don't pay any attention here to the way you write it. Pay attention to the way you read it. And you read it as if it had a vav. So from the perspective of Rabbi Shimon, according to this first interpretation, there would be three other interpretations. It's as if the Torah used the word Sukkos in the plural 3 times, which is not true if you look at the Masoros, if you look at the Ksiv. But if you look at the Kri, the way you read it as if there was a cholam there. Yeah. As if there were vavs. You read Sukkos, which is in the plural. And now we'll understand the machlokes. Rabbanan sabri yesh aim l'misores, basukos, basukos, basukos. 2 times without a vav, and the third time with a vav, and that's the misores. Now we're going to darshan each one of these words. How do we do so? We're going to say that the one time it says Sukkos with a vav, that's in the plural. And the 2 other times without a vav, that's in the singular. So how many Sukkos do we have, Rabosa? What's the magic number? 4. Harekan Arba. Dal Chad Legufe. Now this Dal Chad Legufe is a principle called Ein Darshim Tchilos. Ein Darshim Tchilos means that one pasuk we need for itself, and therefore we can't use it for a drush. So basically it means subtract 1 word Sukkos, because we needed what's called Legufe. Just simple pshat in the pasuk to tell you that there's a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah, and you got to put schach on top of the sukkah. Is then pochulate tlasa. So now you've reduced, when you take out 1 word Sukkos without a vav, which was in the singular, so you went down from 4 to 3. And now we have halacha Moshe Misina. What does halacha Mishina say? Shtaim kilchasam asi hilchiso garasa l'shlishis. It reduces the 3rd dofen, the ukma atefach, and it tells you all you need is 1 tefach. Rabbi Shimon savar yeshem lemikra, and therefore the drasha depends upon the way we read it, not the way it's written. Therefore, you read it as if it said basukos, 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 each one in the plural with a vav. 2 is how much? Harekan sheish. Dal chad kro legufe. At this particular interpretation, even Rav Shimon agrees to the principle of ein darshan tchilos. So we remove one of the sukkos, and that's called dal chad kro legufe. And therefore, pashulei arba. You took sukkos, which is in the plural, so you reduced it from 6 to 4. Shalosh kilchasam asi hilchasa garata lervius vi ukmasa atefa. So the halacha Moshe Misinik tells you that one of those 4 defanos is a tefa. That's called griusa. Griusa means to diminish, to reduce.
The word sukkot is referring to the number of walls.
Correct.
Why do you assume that?
Why do we assume it? Yeah, there's a long discussion here about that. Let's leave that out just so that we make it by the punchline. And I'll try to answer your question afterwards, because I don't remember the answer to your question right now, and it's going to take me a few minutes to find the answer. Okay. So the fact that the Torah is teaching me Sukkos over and over and over again, it's telling me the number of defanos. Ibo is saying that now the Gemara offers an alternative interpretation of this machlok. Liyalma yesh aim lemikra. Even the Chacham agree that yesh aim lemikra, and therefore, if yesh aim lemikra, then we have the number 6. We're going to reduce 6 down to 4 based on the principle of aim darshan tchilos. We need 1 legufe, and then we should be left with 4. So how do we understand the Chachamim? So the Gemara says, if we marsa the Chacham hold Succah boikra, that one word sukkos I need for the mitzvah of schach, the requirement of schach. So that when we calculate the number here, we include not just the defanos, but we also have to include the schach. So it means that besides the schach, we can only come up with 3 defanos. Why? Because we've reduced one of the words sukkos because of the schach. So now we have 3 defanos. Why? Again, let's just go over this. We took out 1 sukkos because yesh aim lemikra. Now we're up to 4 sukkos. We're going to take out one of the 4 because we need it for the schach. Now we reduce it down to 3, and one of those 3 is going to be a tefach based on Talloch Moshe Sinai. That's the Chacham. Umar, so what does Rabbi Shimon hold? Succah lo boikra. I don't need a pasuk to teach me schach, because once you tell me that there's a mitzvah to sit in a sukkah, I understand that a sukkah is got schach on it. And without a schach, it's not called a sukkah. So the very fact that the Torah employs the word sukkah means schach. I don't need a special pasuk for that. Is memela I have 4. If I have 4, I'm going to reduce it to 3 because the 4th is going to be a tefach based on Allah Moshe Sinai. Ibai Sema is the 3rd approach. Kuli alma yesh aim l'misoros. On the contrary, everybody, even Rav Shimon, agrees that yesh aim l'misoros. So what is the machlokas? Hacha b'hakam ifli. Mar sover ki asoy hilchus ligareya. Mar sover ki asoy hilchus lahos. Now this is fascinating to me personally, because I always understood that Allah Moshe Sinai is like signed and sealed. It's written engraved in stone. But now the Gemara is saying that Allah Moshe Sinai only told us something about the mechitza, but in which direction? According to Rabbanan, ligriyusa. Ligriyusa means to tell me that the 3rd dofen doesn't need 7 tefachim, all it needs is 1 tefach. But Rabbi Shimon holds lahosif. Now Allah Moshe Sinai is coming to add, to be more machmir on the simple, straightforward meaning of the pasuk, and to tell me that it's not enough to have 3 defanos, but rather I need 4 defanos. So even though Rav Shimon agrees and adopts the principle yeshem l'misores, which really means that we're going to reduce the number of defanos from 4 to 3, but nevertheless, now Allah Moshe Sinai is coming to tell you that I need a 4th dofen. But that 4th dofen could be a tefach. Ibai Sema, now it's the final 4th interpretation of Machlokes Kuli Alma. Everybody agrees. Ki asoy hilchasa legareya. Even Rav Shimon agrees that the hilchasa is coming to tell you that you don't need an extra dofen. On the contrary, it's coming to tell you that of the defanos that you need, one of them is only a tefach. And not only that, everybody agrees that yesh aim l'misores. And if yesh aim l'misores, then we end up with, let's go over it one more time. We end up with 1, 2, and 2, which means 4. And now what happens to Reb Shimon is hacha b'darshin tchilos kamifli. Mar savar darshin tchilos, umar savar ein darshin tchilos. Rabbi Shimon holds that doresh tchilos, meaning that the first sukkos that it says is not taken up, it's not used up by what we call legufe. Legufe means to tell me that you need a sukkah. I have the right to darshan even the first time the word is written. So that means that I have 4 defanos, 4 sukkahs, because I'm going to include even the first sukkah. So even though I'm holding yesh aim l'misora, and yesh aim l'misora reduces it because it says sukkos without a vav twice, so it's only 1 and 1, but there's 1 sukkos with a vav, and yesh aim l'misora gives me 2. So I have now 4 defanos. But I need the first one for legufe, just to pshuta shel mikra, just to tell me that you need a sukkah on sukkahs. No. Rabbi Shimon holds darshan tchilos. You can darshan and derive halachas even from the first time it appears. But the Chachamim hold ain't darshan tchilos, and therefore we take out the first sukkos, and we're left with three, and then the halacha Moshe Misina is libriusa, and the third dolphin, is only a tef. Rav Masna Omar Taime, the Rabbi Shimon Mehach. Rav Masna has a whole loop shot in Rav Shimon. The pasuk says in Yeshayahu Hanavi describing the ultimate redemption, "V'sukkah tiyeh letzel yomam michorev, u'lemechsa u'lemichsar u'lemistar mizerem u'mimatar." That eventually, what will be the sukkah for Eliyasid Lavo, the end of days, the sukkah will protect us from the sun and from the matar, from the rains. And these are all metaphors for the Rishayim and so forth and so on. But in any event, it's clear that a sukkah is there for protection. And Rav Shimon holds that if you have only two defanos and your third dolphin is all of one tefach, then forget it. The rains and the winds are going to just come right into your sukkah. Therefore, we need at least three defanos, and the fourth could be a tefach. Also, tefach heichon mamido. Where do we put that third dolphin? Omar Rav mamido keneged ayotze. So if you take a look at Rashi on the bottom of Daf Vavam and base, it gives you two drawings of what Rav has in mind. Mamido keneged ayotze, which means that you have two defanos at a 90-degree angle, like a reish. And one is going towards the east and one is going towards the north. In any event, at one of the two ends, you add a tefach. You see those two pictures?
Yeah.
Amri lei Rav Kahana Rav Asi Rav. So two Amoraim approached Rav, and he will just, for 1 minute, we'll go into Daf Zayin. And they asked him the following question: V'amidenu keneged Rosh Tur. Why not put the third dolphin keneged? Now, if you take a look at Rashi here on Daf Zayin, and you look at the third diagram, you see the third diagram going up from the top to the bottom.
What?
On it in my Gemara, it's on the right side on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. You see the Rashi on the right side of Rashi. These are all diagrams of Rashi. The third one is what's called Keneged Rosh Tur, and that means that the third dolphin, which is only a tefach, is exactly parallel to the point in which the other two defanos meet each other at the 90-degree angle. So if you draw a straight line from that 90-degree angle, that's where you put up your dolphin. And why would we prefer that? The answer is because that dolphin, in a sense, extends in both directions. So you can view it as if we're coming to the mashlim to complete the other two defanos. Whereas if you go with the Rashi on the bottom of Daf Vavam and Beis, then clearly you're only accomplishing one dolphin by attaching it only on that side. And Shasik Rav did not respond. And most of the Mefarshim, including the Balamar, say that Rav was not impressed. He says, no. The third dolphin, which is only tefach, has to be attached to the other two defanos. However, the Balamar does quote one Perush who says that Rav actually accepted this logic, that you could put the third dolphin keneged Rosh Hatur. So here we need the diagram of Rashi, the third diagram down from the top of the. Okay, then so tomorrow Belinetta will start with Itmar here on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. And then wishing you a great day.
So the word sukkah